So this lesson is just like all of it is going to give a great context of what comes next, inshallah. But not only that, but it will allow you to understand when you read like the arguments and the debates between different sects and scholars. You can see right away through their position what they are talking about, whether they are Ahlul Sunnah or not. So we will start, inshallah, with a summary of Ahlul Sunnah theological position, recorporeality, tajsim, or the embodiment, or in material, whether the God is material or not, and so on. And then we're going to have a deeper dive in that, not to a great extent, just to give you a flavor, because as I said before, I'm going to have a separate course, like 3-4 sessions on sects and the different theology that were debated between Muslim sects and so on. That, inshallah, comes next after we finish this course. Sorry, so we're gonna give like a little bit of history about tajsim, where it came from, and also a history of some important Islamic groups or sects that has been developing. Not all of them, just those who are relevant to what we are going to be talking about today and what we talked about before. Then that will have to lead us to talk a little bit about Salaf, our Salaf, the Salaf, and the Salafist movement. And we cannot talk about that without also talking a little bit about Ibn Taymiyyah. Then we are going to summarize that with the Ahlul Sunnah position. So basically starting with a summary of Ahlul Sunnah theological position generally, but then we're going to talk about the application of that. How does that apply in some attributes? And the difference between that and other positions. So let's make a start. All right, so from Ahlul Sunnah position, those of you who joined or attended the last lesson, this was the last slide that we left off. It was a little bit of praising to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the author of Al-Kharida al-Bahiya, the book that we are now explaining. And we basically explained that to some extent, but I think we need to like go a little bit in depth about what we're talking about here. منزه عن الحلول والجهة والاتصال والانفصال. So he's free from incarnation or confinement to a direction, or from being connected or disconnected from something else, and so on. We talked about that a little bit last time, but let's elaborate more on that. So for Ahlul Sunnah position, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is incorporeal. He is not a body. He is not like a body that has a shape, not any sort of body. It's not just a body like us, but he is not a body at all. So by body, we mean anything that have dimensions, that is combined from parts. Even if it is like a box, that box still have corners, it has elements to it. You can split it to 2 halves or 3 or whatever. Okay, so anything that is a jism, it's basically, it fills a space. It's it is combined by parts, by atoms, by particles, and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't have a body. He's not a body. He's not corporeal. He is incorporeal. There is no mass to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because mass means he is material. So there is no quantum. You cannot quantify God and say he is that much or this much. There is no quantum to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we talked about before. There is no how. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not physical. You cannot realize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your 5 senses, right? You cannot see, all right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I can smell him, or seeing him in the way that we see in this life, that's inapplicable. Seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter is a different story, which we're going to talk about it when, inshallah, the time comes, but that's basically like a quick summary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is immutable, so he doesn't change. He is not an accident, not arad. Remember what we talked about before, arad? So he doesn't change, he's not accident. So basically Allah is transcendent. He transcends space, transcends time. He is not in a direction. Okay, and when we talked about all of that before, we said because the opposite of any of that would it will have to lead to the fact that, or to the conclusion that Allah or God is emergent, and the world could have created itself. If that is the case, if God emergent to existence, he was not existing or didn't exist and then existed, then what is wrong with saying, okay, the universe has just created itself, like what atheists are saying? Because as we established in the previous lessons, all bodies are contingent and emergent. Bodies have quantum. Anybody have quantum, any creation have a quantum. And anything that has a quantum means that there is something precedes that body in order to determine such quantum. What is it direction? Is it how much length or how long the length of that part would be, or how the shape is going to be? There is something that has to basically determine all those things, because if that is the case, then God becomes a possible being, not necessary existent being. Okay, so I think all that has been proven from the previous lessons. So I'm not gonna talk much about it or like delve much into it. In the Q&A, if you have any issue with any of what I've said so far, we can talk about it. All right. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah At-Tur says, or were they created by nothing, or are they their own creators? Have they created themselves, or have they been created from nothing? Right. So if we said that quantum and body, being a body, is applicable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that basically leads to God being emergent. In this case, there is no point of this ayah.